So we have arrived at the core of an article where the actual study happens. This is the section that will potentially get your manuscript accepted or rejected. You want to be very attentive in how you structure it, how you present the essential information, and how you argue your case and discuss the results you have obtained. Ideally, you want 2 or 3 separate sections in your article for documenting the methods, methodology, and how you would analyze your data, and for presenting the results while discussing what they mean and how the results reflect the objectives of your study. The precision of structure and information in these sections hold regardless of your research type, for example, qualitative, quantitative, or mixed method approaches. If you're writing a purely literary piece or a paper based on some disciplines in humanities, these sections may not apply to your work directly. Still, the academic writing tips could help you. All the previous information about optimizing your words, structuring your sections and headings for search engines and indexing services, providing sufficient examples, references, and evidence for any claim you make, signposting, avoiding repetitions, and the like also apply to these sections. For instance, it is preferable to name the first section as Methods and Methodology with multiple subheadings and the second section as Discussion of the Results with multiple subheadings to document relevant information in easy-to-read shorter text rather than a long piece of continuous text. The methodology section or subsection is where you first reiterate the aims and objectives of your research and then present your research questions and the overall argument about the reasons to identify those specific research questions for your work. In the method section, you document the specific ways you intend to answer those research questions and objectives. You should document detailed information about the corpora, questionnaires or surveys, participants of your study, the analysis methods, and the statistical tests or analytical frameworks you will be using. Don't forget to fully acknowledge the owners or makers of specific frameworks, tests, or software. A noticeable mistake that many first-time article writers make is that they document too much information or leave out the necessary information needed to reproduce the results. Remember that scientific research principle is reproducibility. This means that you should give enough information about the methods of analysis for any reader to be able to reproduce a similar work with some other data or reproduce your exact results with your data. The second big mistake is to explain the descriptive statistics in a separate paragraph after presenting the figures in a table. The term descriptive statistics means the figures are describing themselves, so there is no need to explain them again, especially because the statistics such as distribution, for example, the frequency counts or percentages, central tendency, for example, mean and mode, and dispersion, for example, standard deviation, range, or variance are all standard terms with agreed upon meanings. Therefore, explaining their corresponding values does not add any new information to your discussion. The most noticeable sign of a novice writer as opposed to an expert one for me is that novice writers tend to rely more on numbers and figures while discussing the results, whereas expert writers make meaning out of those numbers and present them in more analytical and meaningful ways. In simple words, good writers tell the readers what those numbers actually mean by comparing and contrasting the results with other similar works. They also link the results to their research questions and explain how the results provide evidence for a claim or answer a specific research question. This is one of the main areas where many manuscripts get rejected. The reviewers simply don't see any connection between the individual figures and the overall argument of that paper. If you fill up the discussion of the results section with a whole bunch of disconnected numbers without fully explaining the overall value, the reviewers may even quit reading the rest of your discussion. And believe me, I have heard of this several times from other reviewers. This is where an overall narrative that I discussed earlier comes to play. If you don't remember that discussion, roll back to previous lectures and review your notes. A Another mistake is to clutter the tables with too many parts and statistics without any clear structural boundaries or spaces. You must document relevant statistical results in each table and give the readers a clear visual clue about the boundaries of items and numbers. If needed, color code your indices or use varying fonts and font sizes to group related statistics in a table. If you must document many figures inside one table, try to include the full results in the table as an appendix at the end of your manuscript, and stick with the essential results in a smaller table in the main body of your paper. A really no-go zone is to conclude from a statistical test what that test is not meant for. Give yourself plenty of time to fully understand what each test means and is used for and how to interpret its results, or you risk coming to wrong conclusions and spoiling all your efforts. This is also one of the main reasons for which manuscripts get rejected. Some authors claim more than what their results can actually support. Some authors also cling to the works of previous scholars and use them as evidence of support for what they are presenting without knowing all the details of those works. Remember, every research is unique in its approach, aims, questions, and methods. You should be able to conclude based on your own results and only refer to previous works for comparing and contrasting.